What would you do if you came home early and found 120 relatives throwing a party in your house without permission? And what if you discovered that party was actually part of an elaborate scheme to steal your home? This is the story of how my own family tried to con me out of everything I'd worked for and how I fought back in ways they never saw coming. I got back a day early and my house had been taken over. Not by burglars, not by squatters, by my own family. 120 relatives I barely knew, treating my home like their personal vacation resort. But let me back up. My name's Julia, and I've spent the last 8 years building something most people don't understand. While everyone else my age was out partying or dating, I was hunched over my laptop at 3 in the morning writing code that would eventually become indie games. Games that actually matter. Games that tell stories nobody else wants to tell. See, I'm not just a developer. I'm the kind of person who sees patterns where others see chaos, who finds beauty in algorithms and poetry and perfectly written functions. It's a lonely world, but it's mine. And for the longest time, I thought that was enough. My family never got it. Never understood why I'd choose pixels and programming over what they called real life. My mother, Lisa, she's always been the type to measure success by how loud you can cheer from the sidelines. My younger brother, Darren, he was her golden boy from day one. Star quarterback in high school, full ride to state college, everything she thought a child should be. I remember this one time when I was 14. I'd just won second place in a national coding competition. Not some local thing, we're talking national level. Kids from MIT and Stanford competing, and here I was, this quiet girl from suburbia, placing second out of 3,000 participants. I was so excited I could barely contain myself. I burst through the front door, certificate in hand, practically vibrating with pride. Mom was in the kitchen making Darren's favorite cookies because he'd scored 2 touchdowns at practice that day. Just practice, not even a real game. Mom, look what I won! I held up the certificate, waiting for that moment every kid dreams of, the moment your parents' eyes light up with pure pride. She glanced over flour on her hands and said, "That's nice, honey. Can you help me with these cookies? Your brother's got recruiters coming to watch his game this Friday." That's nice, honey. 4 words that basically summed up my entire childhood. While Darren got victory parades for making varsity, I got polite acknowledgement for achievements that should have been celebrated. Don't get me wrong, I love my brother, but watching your mom light up like Christmas morning every time he walked in the room while treating your accomplishments like background noise, that does something to you. It shapes you in ways you don't even realize until years later. The pattern continued through high school. Darren's football trophies lined the mantle like golden soldiers, while my coding certificates stayed in a folder in my room. When I got accepted to Carnegie Mellon with a partial scholarship for computer science, Mom's first question was whether they had a good football team. When Darren got into state school, she threw a party. College was my escape. Finally, a place where being brilliant with technology mattered more than how far you could throw a ball. I thrived there. Made friends who spoke my language, professors who saw my potential projects that pushed me beyond what I thought I could do. But even then, family dinners were torture. Everyone would ask Darren about his games, his major, his plans. When they turned to me, it was always the same questions. Still playing with computers. When are you going to find a nice boyfriend? Oh, still, don't you think you're missing out on the college experience? Missing out. As if building the foundation for my entire career was somehow less valuable than keg parties and fraternity mixers. After graduation, I did something that shocked everyone. I bought a house. Not just any house, but a beautiful 3-bedroom Victorian in a neighborhood where most people my age couldn't even afford to rent. How did I afford it? Simple. While everyone else was accumulating student debt and entry-level salaries, I'd been freelancing since sophomore year, building apps, designing websites, creating custom software for small businesses. By the time I graduated, I had enough saved for a substantial down payment and a portfolio that had companies calling me instead of the other way around. The house wasn't just a home. It was my sanctuary, my workspace, my proof that choosing the unconventional path had been worth it. My family's reaction was predictable. Mom kept asking if I was sure I could afford it. Dad wondered aloud if I was getting in over my head. Darren, fresh out of college and living in mom and dad's basement while he figured things out, made jokes about me becoming a hermit in my tech cave. None of them seemed to understand that this wasn't just a house. It was freedom, the freedom to work on projects that mattered to me, the freedom to set my own schedule, the freedom to build something lasting without constantly having to prove its value to people who would never understand it anyway. For 3 years, that house was my haven. I'd converted the spare bedroom into a state-of-the-art development studio. The living room was my brainstorming space with whiteboards covering 2 entire walls. The kitchen became my late-night fuel station, always stocked with the kind of snacks that sustained marathon coding sessions. And then, last month, something incredible happened. My latest game, a narrative-driven adventure about found family and belonging, caught the attention of a major indie publisher. Not just any publisher, but the kind that turns underground hits into cultural phenomena. They wanted to meet. They wanted to discuss distribution deals, marketing campaigns, the whole 9 yards. I was flying high. Finally, validation from the industry I'd worked so hard to break into. Finally, proof that all those years of grinding, of choosing code over social events, of building something meaningful, instead of just following the crowd, had been worth it. I called Mom to share the news. Her response, "That's wonderful, honey. Oh, did I tell you Darren got promoted to assistant manager at the sporting goods store?" And that's when I realized nothing had changed. I could win every award in the tech industry, could build the next breakthrough application, could literally change the world with my work, and I'd still be, "That's nice, honey," while Darren would be front page news for getting a retail promotion. But you know what? I was okay with that, because I'd learned something important over the years. You can't make people value what they don't understand. You can't force appreciation from people who measure worth by completely different standards. And honestly, I'd stopped needing their approval. I had my work. I had my house. I had a small but solid group of friends who got excited about the same things I did. I had a publisher interested in my games and a future that looked brighter than I'd ever imagined. What I didn't have was any idea that my family was about to turn my carefully built sanctuary into ground zero for the most insane family drama I could have never seen coming. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me tell you about what happened when I walked through my front door last Tuesday afternoon, a day earlier than expected, and found my house transformed into something I barely recognized. I turned onto my street at exactly 2:30 in the afternoon on what should have been a quiet Tuesday. The meeting with the publisher had gone better than I dreamed possible. They loved my game concept, they wanted to fast-track production, and they were talking about numbers that would change my life completely. I was floating on cloud 9, already mentally planning how I'd celebrate this massive breakthrough. But as I rounded the corner toward my house, that euphoria evaporated instantly. Cars everywhere, lining both sides of the street like some kind of automotive parade. My quiet residential neighborhood looked like a parking lot at a football stadium. I counted them as I drove slowly past, my heart sinking with each one. 20 cars, 30, 40. I stopped counting at 50 because I was starting to hyperventilate. And these weren't just any cars. These were the kinds of vehicles that screamed extended family gathering. Minivans with soccer ball decals. Pickup trucks with hunting stickers. SUVs with honor student bumper stickers that were definitely not for honor students I knew. Every single parking spot on my street was taken. Plus cars were double parked, blocking driveways, creating a traffic nightmare that would probably have the neighbors calling the city, but the cars were just the beginning. As I pulled into my own driveway, squeezing between a rusted-out Camaro and a massive Suburban, I saw something that made my blood pressure spike through the roof. A banner, stretched across my front porch like some kind of festive declaration. Big, bold letters in what looked like hand-painted red and gold. Family Forever Reunion. 2025. Family forever reunion. On my property, using my house, without anyone bothering to mention it to me. I sat in my car for a full 30 seconds, just staring at that banner, trying to process what I was seeing. This had to be some kind of mistake. Maybe I'd taken a wrong turn. Maybe I was having some kind of stress-induced hallucination from the publisher meeting. Maybe I'd accidentally driven to some parallel universe where my family had completely lost their minds. But no. There was my address on the mailbox. There was my garden gnome by the front steps. There was my house transformed into what looked like the headquarters for a small town festival. The sound hit me next. Even with my car windows up and the engine still running, I could hear it. Voices. Lots and lots of voices. Kids screaming and laughing. Adults talking loudly over each other. Music playing from what sounded like multiple sources. The kind of chaotic noise that only happens when you pack way too many people into a space designed for maybe a quarter of that number. I turned off the engine and just sat there trying to mentally prepare myself for whatever fresh hell awaited me inside my own home. Through my living room window, I could see people moving around. Strangers. Complete strangers wandering through my carefully organized space like they owned the place. The front door opened, and a woman I'd never seen before in my life stepped out onto my porch. She was maybe 60, wearing a floral dress and carrying a casserole dish, looking perfectly at home on my property. She waved at me like we were old friends and called out, "You must be Julia. Lisa told us all about you. Come on in, honey. The party's just getting started." The party that was happening in my house without my knowledge or consent. I grabbed my laptop bag, took a deep breath, and walked toward my own front door like I was approaching a crime scene. Because honestly, that's what this felt like. A crime scene where the victims were my privacy, my personal space, and my sanity. The moment I stepped inside, the noise level tripled. It was like walking into a casino or a sports bar during the playoffs. Conversations happening in every room, kids running up and down my hardwood stairs, the sound of my kitchen appliances being used by people who had no business operating them. My living room, which I'd left clean and organized just 3 days ago, looked like a hurricane had blown through it. Folding chairs were set up in clusters. Card tables were covered with potluck dishes I didn't recognize. People were sitting on my furniture, leaning against my walls, treating my home like it was some kind of community center. And these weren't people I knew. Sure, there were a few faces I vaguely recognized from distant family gatherings. But most of these people were complete strangers. Distant cousins I'd never met. Plus ones and friends of friends who somehow qualified for this impromptu invasion of my personal space. I pushed through the crowd trying to find someone in charge, someone who could explain what the hell was happening. That's when I heard my mother's voice coming from the kitchen, loud and cheerful, playing hostess like she lived here. "Make yourselves at home, everyone. There's plenty of food and the bathrooms are upstairs if you need them. Make yourselves at home. In my home. The home she was treating like her personal party venue." I fought my way through the crowd toward the kitchen, stepping over toys that definitely weren't mine and avoiding spilled drinks on my carpet. The closer I got to the kitchen, the angrier I became. Not just annoyed, not just frustrated, genuinely deeply angry in a way I hadn't felt since childhood. Mom was standing by my sink washing dishes that belonged to other people, surrounded by women I didn't recognize who were treating my kitchen like their personal catering station. She looked up when she saw me, and her face lit up with that fake bright smile she used when she was about to explain away something inexcusable. "Julia, honey, you're back early." She dried her hands on my dish towel and came over like she was greeting me at her own party. "How was your trip? We didn't expect you until tomorrow." "What is this?" I gestured around at the chaos surrounding us. "What are all these people doing in my house?" "Oh, this... Well, we were planning the family reunion, and Darren suggested we have it here, since you have such a nice big house, and plenty of space. We didn't want to bother you with all the planning details, so we thought we'd surprise you. Didn't want to bother me with planning details for a party in my own house." "Mom, you can't just decide to have a family reunion in my house without asking me. This is my home. I didn't agree to this. Darren appeared from somewhere behind me, beer in hand, grinning like this was all one big joke. Come on, Jules, don't be such a killjoy. It's family. When's the last time we all got together like this? Besides, you're always working anyway. At least, now your house is getting some actual use. Some actual use. My house, where I'd built my entire career, where I spent 12 hours a day creating things that mattered, was apparently just sitting here unused until my family decided to throw a surprise party. Darren, I work from home. This is my office, my studio, my workspace. I can't just have 100 people trampling through here whenever you decide to throw a party. 100 people, Mom laughed like I was being dramatic. Oh, honey, it's not nearly that many. Maybe 60 or 70 at most. 60 or 70 strangers in my house was supposed to be reassuring somehow. And how long is this supposed to last? I asked, dreading the answer. Well, the official reunion is just today, but some folks are staying through the weekend. Cousin Margaret drove all the way from Oregon, and Uncle Frank's family is camping in the backyard. We thought you wouldn't mind since you're so independent and all. Camping in my backyard. People were camping in my backyard. That's when I heard it. A sound that made my heart stop. A sharp crash from upstairs followed by a kid's voice saying, "Uh-oh." I pushed past Mom and Darren and ran toward the stairs, but the crowd was so thick I could barely move. People were sitting on my staircase like it was stadium seating. I had to say, "Excuse me," about 15 times just to get to the second floor. My bedroom door was wide open, my private personal bedroom where I kept things that mattered to me, where I kept memories and keepsakes and items that couldn't be replaced, and there were people in there, strangers rifling through my space like it was a museum exhibit. "Excuse me," I said, trying to keep my voice level. "This is my bedroom. I need everyone to please step out." A woman who looked like she might be someone's aunt turned to me with a dismissive wave. "Oh, you must be Julia. We were just admiring your setup, so organized. Lisa said you wouldn't mind if we took a peek." Lisa said I wouldn't mind. Lisa said a lot of things, apparently, without bothering to check with me first. That's when I saw him. A kid, maybe 8 years old, standing next to my dresser with something in his hands. Something that made my entire world tilt sideways. My grandmother's music box, the one she'd given me before she died, the one that played Für Elise and held the only jewelry I cared about, the music box that was now in 2 pieces in this kid's hands. "I was just trying to make it play," he said, looking up at me with wide eyes. "But it fell apart. It fell apart." My grandmother's music box, the one thing in this house that couldn't be replaced, was now a pile of broken wood and twisted metal, because some random kid I'd never met before was playing with my personal belongings in my own bedroom. I took the pieces from his hands, trying to keep my voice steady. "Where are your parents?" "Downstairs, I think." "Are you mad at me?" Was I mad? I was past mad. I was past furious. I was in some emotional territory I didn't even have words for. "Everyone out," I said quietly. "Everyone out of my bedroom right now." The adults exchanged glances like I was being unreasonable, like asking people to leave my private bedroom was some kind of outrageous request. "Honey, we were just looking," one of them said. "No harm done." No harm done, except for the irreplaceable family heirloom that was now in pieces in my hands. I herded everyone out of my bedroom and closed the door behind them, leaning against it for a moment, while I tried to process what was happening. My house had been invaded. My privacy had been violated. My personal belongings were being treated like public property, and my family had orchestrated all of it without saying a single word to me. This wasn't just a surprise party. This was a complete takeover. And judging by the number of cars outside and the camping equipment I'd glimpsed in my backyard, it was just getting started. I locked my bedroom door and sat on my bed, staring at the broken pieces of my grandmother's music box scattered in my palms. The delicate ballerina that used to spin to Für Elise was now just a headless figurine with a bent leg. The intricate wooden inlay that had taken some craftsman hours to perfect was cracked down the middle. But it wasn't just about the music box. It was about what it represented, the complete disregard for my boundaries, my property, my feelings. the assumption that everything I owned was somehow communal property for the family to use as they saw fit. My phone buzzed. A text from Marcus Chen, my closest friend from college and the one person who truly understood my work. Marcus was a data analyst at a tech startup downtown, but more importantly, he was the kind of friend who could read between the lines when something was seriously wrong. The text read, "How did the publisher meeting go? Ready to celebrate your inevitable success." I stared at that message for a long moment. The publisher meeting felt like it had happened in another lifetime, even though it was just a few hours ago. The excitement, the validation, the sense that my career was finally taking off exactly like I dreamed. All of that had been completely overshadowed by coming home to find my house transformed into a three-ring circus. I started typing back. Meeting went great. House situation is a nightmare. Family threw surprise reunion here without asking. Send help. My phone rang immediately. Marcus didn't believe in texting when something was actually important. "What do you mean they threw a reunion at your house?" His voice was sharp with disbelief. "Without asking you, I mean exactly that. I came home to about 100 people treating my house like a community center. Kids breaking my stuff. Strangers in my bedroom, my mom acting like she lives here." "Julia, that's completely insane. Did you kick them out?" I looked toward my bedroom door beyond which the party was still going strong. The noise hadn't diminished at all. If anything, it seemed to be getting louder as more people arrived. I tried. Mom just brushed me off with her usual, "We didn't want to bother you" routine. Darren told me to stop being a killjoy. They're acting like I'm being unreasonable for not wanting strangers camping in my backyard. Wait, people are camping in your backyard? According to my mother, yes. Apparently, some relatives drove in from out of state, and they just assumed they could set up camp on my property for the weekend. There was a long pause on Marcus's end. When he spoke again, his voice had that careful, analytical tone he used when he was trying to solve a complex problem. "Julia, this doesn't make sense. Your family knows how private you are. They know you work from home. They know this house is your sanctuary. Why would they suddenly decide to throw a massive party there without even mentioning it to you?" He was right. It didn't make sense. My family might not understand my work or appreciate my achievements, but they weren't completely clueless about my personality. They knew I valued my privacy. They knew I didn't enjoy large gatherings. They knew I'd specifically chosen this house because it was my refuge from exactly this kind of chaos. "I don't know," I said. "Maybe they thought I'd be gone longer. Maybe they figured they could clean up before I got back and I'd never find out. Or maybe there's something else going on here," Marcus said quietly. "Something they don't want you to know about." That thought sent a chill down my spine, because Marcus was right about one thing. My family might be thoughtless, but they weren't usually actively deceptive. At least, not on this scale. "I'm coming over," Marcus said. "Don't do anything dramatic until I get there. And Julia, start paying attention to what people are saying. If there's another agenda here, someone's going to slip up and reveal it." He hung up before I could argue. Marcus had this protective streak when it came to his friends, especially when he sensed someone was being taken advantage of. It was one of the things I loved most about him, even when it meant he was about to drive across town to insert himself into my family drama. I unlocked my bedroom door and stepped back into the hallway, trying to look casual while actually listening carefully to the conversations around me. Marcus was right. If this was about more than just poor planning and boundary issues, someone would eventually say something revealing. The first thing I noticed was how comfortable everyone seemed. This wasn't the awkward energy of people who were improvising or making last-minute arrangements. These people were settled in like they'd been planning this for weeks, maybe months. I made my way downstairs, weaving through clusters of relatives and trying to catch fragments of conversation. Most of it was typical reunion chatter. Updates on kids and jobs, complaints about the drive, compliments on the food. But then I heard something that made me stop in my tracks. "Lisa did such a good job coordinating everything," a woman I didn't recognize was saying to my Aunt Carol. Getting everyone here, organizing the potluck, even arranging the sleeping arrangements. She must have started planning this months ago. Months ago. This had been in the works for months, and no one had said a word to me. I kept listening, moving closer to where my mom was holding court near the kitchen island. Well, we wanted it to be perfect, Mom was saying to a group of cousins. Julia works so hard, we thought she deserved to have family around to celebrate her success. And this house is just perfect for gatherings. So much space, such a lovely backyard. Celebrate my success. They were using my recent career breakthrough as justification for throwing a party I never wanted. And they were talking about my house like it was some kind of family asset rather than my personal property. But it was what I heard next that really made my blood run cold. I was standing near the doorway to the living room when I heard Darren's voice coming from the back patio. He was talking to someone I couldn't see, but his voice carried clearly through the open sliding door. Look, the timing couldn't be better, he was saying. She's riding high from this publisher thing, feeling all generous and family-oriented. If we're ever going to convince her to sell, it's now. Convince me to sell. Sell what? My house. I moved closer to the patio door, pretending to be interested in the potluck spread while straining to hear more. Are you sure she'll go for it? The other voice belonged to my dad. She's pretty attached to this place. She won't have much choice once she sees the numbers, Darren replied. I've been working on this for months, got pre-approval for a loan that'll cover most of the property value. We tell her we want to keep it in the family. Offer her a fair price, everybody wins. A fair price. Darren was planning to buy my house. The house I'd worked my ass off to afford. The house that represented everything I'd built for myself. What if she says no? Dad asked. She won't, especially not with everyone here talking about how perfect this place is for family gatherings. We'll make it seem like the natural thing to do, like she'd be selfish not to share this space with the people who love her. My heart was pounding so hard I was surprised no one could hear it over the party noise. This wasn't a spontaneous reunion. This wasn't even a celebration of my success. This was a setup, a carefully orchestrated manipulation designed to pressure me into selling my house to my brother. But why now? Why this elaborate charade? That's when Marcus arrived. I saw his car pull up through the living room window, and I watched him navigate the maze of vehicles to find a parking spot 3 blocks away. By the time he made it to my front door, I was there waiting for him. This is worse than I thought, he said, looking around at the chaos with wide eyes. How many people are here? Too many. But Marcus, I overheard something. This isn't just a reunion. Darren's planning to try to buy my house. He's been working on it for months. Marcus's expression immediately shifted into what I called his analyst mode. Sharp focus, calculating eyes, the look he got when someone presented him with a puzzle that needed solving. Show me your home office, he said, and tell me everything you heard. We fought our way through the crowd to my converted spare bedroom, which thankfully seemed to be off-limits to the reunion guests. My workstation was exactly as I'd left it. Dual monitors, dark desk, organized filing cabinet locked. Here's what doesn't add up, Marcus said, settling into my spare chair while I booted up my computer. If Darren just wanted to buy your house, he could have approached you directly. He didn't need to throw a massive family reunion to soften you up unless what? Unless he needed to establish some kind of precedent. Some kind of justification for why the house should belong to the family instead of just you. The pieces were starting to come together in a way that made me feel sick. The reunion wasn't just about pressuring me to sell. It was about reframing my house as a family asset, making it seem like this property was naturally meant for gatherings and communal use. We need to see if he's already taken any legal steps, Marcus said. Check your credit report, check for any liens or claims against the property, and let's see if we can find any paperwork he might have left lying around. It seemed crazy to think that Darren would be careless enough to leave evidence of his scheme just sitting around my house. But then again, he probably thought I'd be gone until tomorrow. He probably figured he'd have time to clean up any loose ends before I got back. We started with my credit report, which thankfully showed no surprises. No unauthorized inquiries, no new accounts, nothing that suggested anyone had been messing with my finances behind my back. But then, Marcus had another idea. What if he's not trying to buy it outright, he said. What if he's trying to establish some kind of co-ownership claim? That possibility had never occurred to me, but it made a horrible kind of sense. If Darren could somehow argue that the house was meant to be family property, or that he'd contributed to its purchase, or that there was some kind of verbal agreement about shared ownership. Check your email, Marcus said. Look for anything from banks, lawyers, real estate agents, and check your physical mail too. Sometimes people intercept documents they don't want you to see. I started going through my email while Marcus went to check my mailbox. Most of it was typical business correspondence and spam, but then I found something that made my stomach drop. An email from my mortgage company dated 2 weeks ago with the subject line, "Inquiry about co-borrower addition." I opened it with shaking hands. "Dear Ms. Thompson, we received an inquiry from Darren Thompson regarding the possibility of adding a co-borrower to your existing mortgage. Per our standard procedure, we are reaching out to confirm that this inquiry was made with your knowledge and consent. Please contact us at your earliest convenience to discuss this matter." Darren had contacted my mortgage company. He'd tried to get himself added to my loan without my knowledge or permission. Marcus came back from the mailbox, carrying a stack of mail that had apparently been sitting there for several days. Bills, magazines, and something that made us both freeze. A certified letter from a law firm I'd never heard of. "When did this arrive?" I asked, checking the date stamp. 3 days ago," Marcus said grimly, "right around the time you left for your publisher meeting." We opened it together, and what we found inside was even worse than I'd feared. It was a formal legal document outlining Darren's claim to a 50% ownership stake in my property. According to the paperwork, he was asserting that our parents had provided down payment assistance that was intended as a gift to both their children, not just to me. He was claiming that there had been a verbal agreement that the house would eventually become shared family property. Every single word of it was a lie. "This is dated 6 months ago," Marcus said, studying the document. "He's been planning this since last year." But that wasn't even the worst part. The worst part was the attached documentation. Bank statements showing payments from our parents' account to mine around the time of my house purchase. Payments I'd completely forgotten about because they'd seemed so insignificant at the time. When I bought the house, my parents had insisted on giving me money for a housewarming gift. It was maybe $2,000 total spread across several small payments. I'd tried to refuse it, but Mom had insisted, saying it was tradition, and she wanted to contribute something to my new home. At the time, it had seemed like a sweet gesture, a rare moment of parental support for one of my major life decisions. Now I realized it had been a setup. Those small payments weren't gifts. They were evidence. Evidence that Darren was now using to claim partial ownership of my property. "He's been planning this for almost a year," I said, staring at the legal documents in disbelief. The reunion, the family gathering, all of it. He needed to establish that this house was being used as family property so he could strengthen his ownership claim. Marcus was quiet for a long moment, reading through the paperwork with the focused intensity he brought to particularly complex data problems. "Julia," he said finally, "this isn't just about your house. Look at these financial documents. He's already secured a loan using his projected ownership stake as collateral. If his claim goes through, he's planning to force a sale and use the proceeds to cover his debt." The room started spinning. Darren wasn't just trying to buy my house. He was trying to steal it, and he'd already borrowed money against it, assuming his scheme would work. Outside my office, the reunion was still going strong. People were laughing and eating and treating my home like their personal vacation resort. But they weren't just party guests anymore. They were unwitting participants in my brother's plan to systematically dismantle everything I'd worked for. And the worst part? He'd used my own success, my career breakthrough, as the perfect timing for his betrayal. While I was out securing my future with the publisher, he was back here destroying it with legal paperwork and family manipulation. The pieces of my grandmother's music box were still on my desk where I'd left them. Broken beyond repair, just like my trust in the people who were supposed to love me unconditionally. But unlike the music box, I wasn't going to let myself stay broken. I stared at those legal documents until the words blurred together. The betrayal was so complete, so carefully orchestrated, that I couldn't even process it all at once. This wasn't a spontaneous family reunion. This wasn't even a misguided attempt to include me in family activities. This was theft, plain and simple, dressed up in family loyalty, and wrapped with a big red bow. "We need to get you out of here," Marcus said quietly. "Right now, before they realize you found this paperwork." He was right. I was sitting in my own home office surrounded by evidence of my brother's scheme to steal my house, while downstairs that same brother was probably telling more relatives about how perfect this property would be for family gatherings. The irony was so thick I could barely breathe. "But this is my house," I said, hearing how small my voice sounded. "Why should I be the one who has to leave?" "Because right now you're outnumbered about 50-1, Marcus replied, already gathering up the legal documents. "And because we need time to figure out how to fight this without tipping them off that we know what they're planning." I looked around my office, my sanctuary, within my sanctuary. 3 years of building this perfect workspace. 3 years of creating games that mattered, of establishing myself as an independent professional, of proving that I could succeed on my own terms. And my own family had been planning to take it all away from me. "Pack a bag," Marcus said. "Just essentials for a few days. We're going to document everything, get legal advice, and come back with a strategy that'll shut this down permanently." I felt like I was moving through the water as I packed. Every item I put in my overnight bag felt significant somehow. Like I was evacuating from a natural disaster, not sure when I'd be able to come home. My laptop, because my work was my lifeline. A change of clothes, because I couldn't predict how long this would take to resolve. The broken pieces of my grandmother's music box, because leaving them felt like abandoning the last tangible connection to the family member who'd actually loved me unconditionally. Marcus was in full operational mode, photographing every page of Darren's legal documents, with his phone making notes about timestamps and details. "We need pictures of the reunion too," he said. "Evidence that they're using your property without permission. Proof that this gathering was planned without your consent." So I took my phone and walked back downstairs, moving through my own house, like a spy gathering intelligence. I photographed the Family Forever banner stretched across my porch, the cars blocking my driveway and lining the street, the camping equipment in my backyard, strangers eating food in my kitchen, using my bathroom, sitting on my furniture like they belonged there. Every photo felt like another nail in the coffin of my relationship with my family, but I took them anyway, because Marcus was right. If we were going to fight this, we needed evidence. The hardest part was walking past my mother without saying anything. She was still playing hostess, still treating my home like her personal party venue, still acting like this whole situation was perfectly normal. Part of me wanted to confront her right there, to demand an explanation for how she could participate in something so manipulative and cruel, but Marcus had warned me to stay quiet until we had a plan. So I just walked past, taking pictures, gathering evidence of my own family's betrayal. We left through the back door, avoiding the crowd in the living room. Marcus had parked 3 blocks away, and we walked to his car in silence. I kept expecting someone to chase after us to demand to know where we were going, but no one even noticed we'd left. They were too busy enjoying their party in my house. The hotel Marcus found was one of those extended stay places that catered to business travelers. Clean, anonymous, functional. The kind of place where you could disappear for a while and figure out how to put your life back together. I sat on the edge of the bed while Marcus set up his laptop on the desk, feeling like a refugee from my own life. "Okay," he said, pulling up a new document. "Let's go through everything we know and figure out our next move." For the next 2 hours, we laid out the entire conspiracy. The timeline, the legal documents, the evidence of planning and premeditation. Marcus took notes in his methodical way, organizing the information like he was building a case file. "Here's what they're counting on," he said finally. "They're counting on you being too overwhelmed to fight back, too family-oriented to pursue legal action against your own brother, too conflict-averse to make a scene." He was right. That was exactly the kind of person I'd always been. The peacekeeper, The one who avoided confrontation, who tried to smooth over family tensions, who sacrificed her own needs to keep everyone else happy. But here's what they didn't count on, Marcus continued. They didn't count on you having someone in your corner who understands legal documentation. They didn't count on you discovering their plan before they were ready to implement it. And they sure as hell didn't count on you having the financial resources to fight back. That last point hit me like a lightning bolt. They didn't know about the publisher deal. They'd planned this entire scheme assuming I was still the struggling indie developer who might be vulnerable to financial pressure. They had no idea that my career had just taken a massive leap forward, that I now had the resources to hire the best lawyers money could buy. "We're going to draft a cease and desist letter," Marcus said, "demanding that Darren withdraw his fraudulent ownership claim and vacate your property immediately. We're going to cite the mortgage fraud attempt, the trespassing, the property damage, everything." I watched him work fingers flying over the keyboard as he built our counterattack. But underneath my gratitude for his help, there was something else. Something that felt like a vast, empty space where my family relationships used to be. "Marcus," I said, and my voice came out smaller than I intended. "What if this works? What if we stop Darren's scheme and get everyone out of my house and protect my property? What then?" He looked up from his typing. "What do you mean?" "I mean what's left after this. My brother tried to steal my house. My parents participated in a scheme to defraud me. My extended family helped create a cover story for what amounts to a con game. Even if we win, even if we protect everything I've built, how do I ever trust any of them again?" The words came out in a rush, and I realized I was crying. Not the angry tears I'd been fighting all evening, but something deeper. Something that felt like mourning. I keep thinking about Christmas mornings when I was little. I continued wiping my eyes with the back of my hand. How excited I get to give everyone their presents. How I'd save up my allowance for weeks to buy things I thought they'd love. I believed so hard that if I just tried hard enough, if I just proved myself enough, they'd see me the way I saw them. Marcus closed his laptop and moved to sit beside me on the bed. He didn't try to offer false comfort or tell me everything would be okay. He just sat there while I fell apart. My grandmother's music box," I said, pulling the broken pieces out of my bag. "She gave this to me the Christmas before she died. She told me it belonged to her grandmother and her grandmother before that, 4 generations of women in our family, and she chose to give it to me because she said I was the one who would treasure it properly." I held up the cracked wooden base, the bent metal mechanism, the headless ballerina. "Some kid I've never met broke it because my family thought my bedroom was part of their public tour. And when I tried to explain why that mattered, why this house and everything in it represents years of work and sacrifice and building something meaningful, they looked at me like I was being selfish." My voice was trembling now, but I couldn't stop talking. Do you know what the worst part is? It's not even the money or the house or the legal stuff. It's that they looked me in the eye and lied to me. Mom stood in my kitchen and told me this was a surprise to celebrate my success, while she knew perfectly well that Darren was planning to take everything I've worked for. Marcus was quiet for a long moment. When he finally spoke, his voice was gentle but firm. "Julia, I know this hurts. I know it feels like your whole family has betrayed you. But here's what I want you to remember. The reason Darren's scheme is so elaborate, the reason he needed months of planning and legal manipulation and elaborate cover stories, is because what you've built is real. Your success is real. Your independence is real. Your house, your career, your life. All of it is real and valuable and worth protecting." He gestured toward his laptop where the cease and desist letter was half finished. "They're trying to take your house because you bought a house. They're trying to undermine your independence because you achieved independence. They're trying to manipulate you because straightforward approaches wouldn't work on someone as smart and capable as you are." I looked down at the broken music box in my hands. "I don't know how to do this, Marcus. I don't know how to fight my own family." "You don't fight them," he said quietly. "You protect yourself. There's a difference. Fighting would be trying to hurt them back, trying to get revenge, trying to make them pay for what they've done. Protecting yourself is just refusing to let them succeed. He was right. This wasn't about revenge or getting even. This was about drawing a line and saying no. No, you can't take my house. No, you can't manipulate me with fake family loyalty. No, you can't treat me like a child who doesn't deserve to make her own decisions about her own life. What if they hate me for this? I asked. Marcus was quiet for so long I thought he wasn't going to answer. When he finally spoke, his voice was sad but certain. Julia, if they hate you for refusing to let them steal from you, then they never loved you in the first place. They loved the idea of you as someone they could control and manipulate. But they never loved the real you, the independent, successful, strong person who built a life on her own terms. That truth hit me like a physical blow, but it also felt like something lifting off my chest, a weight I'd been carrying for so long I'd forgotten it was there. So, what do we do? I asked. Marcus opened his laptop again and cracked his knuckles like a pianist preparing for a difficult piece. We finish this letter, we send it tonight, and tomorrow morning we take back your house. I watched him work, feeling something I hadn't felt in years. Not hope exactly, but something close to it. The sense that maybe for the first time in my life I didn't have to choose between standing up for myself and maintaining family relationships. Because after tonight, I wasn't sure there were any family relationships left to maintain. But maybe that was okay. Maybe losing people who never really saw me was actually a kind of freedom. Outside the hotel window, the city lights stretched out like stars. Somewhere out there was my house full of people who thought they could take advantage of my kindness and use my success against me. But they were wrong. They'd underestimated me in every way that mattered. And tomorrow, they were going to find out exactly how wrong they'd been. The next morning, I woke up in that sterile hotel room feeling like a completely different person. Not different in some dramatic, movie-worthy way, but different in a quiet, fundamental sense. Like I'd finally stopped apologizing for taking up space in my own life. Marcus was already up, sitting at the desk with his laptop and 2 cups of coffee from the lobby. I sent the cease and desist letter at 6 a.m., he said without looking up. Your parents should have received it by now. The letter was beautifully crafted, professional, specific, and absolutely devastating. It outlined every aspect of Darren's fraudulent scheme, demanded immediate cessation of all legal proceedings against my property, and gave them exactly 24 hours to vacate my house completely. But the real genius was in what Marcus had added at the end. An invitation to meet and discuss the situation like adults. You're giving them away to save face, I said, reading over his shoulder. I'm giving them away to back down without admitting they're criminals, he replied, because technically what they're doing crosses several legal lines: mortgage fraud, trespassing, conspiracy to commit theft. If they want to avoid actual criminal charges, they need to work with us. My phone had been buzzing with increasingly frantic calls and texts since about 7 a.m. Mom, Dad, Darren, even some relatives I barely knew, all demanding to know what was going on, why I was being so dramatic, why I couldn't just talk to them like family. The irony wasn't lost on me. Now they wanted to talk like family. After months of planning behind my back, after orchestrating an elaborate scheme to steal my house, after treating me like an obstacle to be managed rather than a person to be respected. But I was done being managed. I want to meet with them, I told Marcus. Not at my house, obviously. Somewhere neutral. Somewhere public enough that they can't try to intimidate or manipulate me. Are you sure we could just let the lawyers handle everything from here? I thought about that option. It would certainly be easier. Clean, professional, completely impersonal. But something about it felt wrong. Like I'd be hiding behind legal technicalities instead of standing up for myself directly. No, I said finally. I want to look them in the eye and tell them exactly what I think of their scheme. I want them to know that I'm not the pushover they thought I was. Marcus nodded approvingly. Where do you want to meet? I suggested a coffee shop downtown. Public enough to prevent a scene, neutral enough that no one could claim home field advantage. Marcus called my parents and arranged everything with the calm professionalism of someone who'd clearly dealt with corporate negotiations before. 11 a.m., he said, after hanging up. Your parents and Darren, I'll be there as your advocate and witness. The drive to the coffee shop felt like the longest 30 minutes of my life. I kept rehearsing what I wanted to say, trying to find words that would convey both my anger and my resolve without descending into emotional chaos. This wasn't about revenge or punishment. This was about setting boundaries and protecting what I'd built. But when I walked into that coffee shop and saw my family sitting at a corner table, looking like they were attending a funeral, all my carefully planned speeches evaporated. They looked smaller somehow, older, like the weight of their deception had finally settled on their shoulders. Mom was fidgeting with her purse strap. Dad kept checking his phone. Darren was staring at his hands like he'd never seen them before. For just a moment, I felt sorry for them. These were the people who'd raised me, who'd been present for every birthday and Christmas and milestone, even if they hadn't always understood or appreciated who I was becoming. Seeing them sitting there, clearly uncomfortable and out of their depth, made my heart ache in a way I hadn't expected. But then I remembered the legal documents, the months of planning, the elaborate deception, the way they'd used my own success as timing for their betrayal. Marcus and I sat down across from them, and for a long moment nobody spoke. The coffee shop hummed with normal morning activity around us. People ordering lattes, reading newspapers, having ordinary conversations about ordinary problems. Meanwhile, we were sitting there like negotiators at a hostage situation. Finally, Mom broke the silence. Julia, honey, I think there's been some kind of misunderstanding. We never meant for any of this to get so complicated. Some kind of misunderstanding. Like Darren's legal claim to half my house was just a paperwork mix-up. Mom, I said, keeping my voice level and calm, there's no misunderstanding. I know exactly what Darren's been planning. I've seen the legal documents. I know about the mortgage inquiry. I know this whole reunion was designed to make it look like my house is family property. The color drained from Dad's face. Darren still wouldn't look up from his hands. We just thought, Mom continued, that maybe we could work something out as a family. Find a solution that works for everyone. A solution that works for everyone, I repeated, like Darren stealing half my house. It's not stealing, Darren said, finally looking up with a flash of his old defensive anger. Mom and Dad helped with your down payment. That makes them investors. That makes the house family property. The audacity of it took my breath away. $2,000 in housewarming gifts spread across several small payments suddenly transformed into a major financial investment that justified a 50% ownership claim. Darren, I said those were gifts, small gifts that I tried to refuse. You can't retroactively turn gifts into investments because you need collateral for a loan. His face went red. Look, Julia, you don't understand the situation I'm in. I've got debts, okay? I've got obligations. And you're sitting in that huge house all by yourself, barely using half the space. So you decided to steal it. I decided to propose a family arrangement that would benefit everyone, he shot back. You could sell your share, take the money, maybe buy something smaller that actually fits your lifestyle. The family keeps the house for gatherings and reunions. Everybody wins. Everybody wins. Everybody, except me, apparently. Marcus had been silent through this exchange, but now he opened his briefcase and pulled out a stack of papers. The same legal documents we'd found in my mail, plus several others I recognized from his research the night before. Actually, Marcus said in his calm, analytical voice, let's talk about the real situation you're in, Darren. He spread the papers across the table like he was dealing cards. Bank statements, loan applications, correspondence with lawyers, a complete paper trail of Darren's scheme. You applied for a secured loan 6 months ago, Marcus continued. using your projected ownership stake in Julia's house as collateral. You've already spent most of that money. Your legal claim against the property isn't about family arrangements or shared investments. It's about covering your gambling debts before your creditors take more drastic action. The silence that followed was deafening. Mom's mouth fell open. Dad's face went gray. Darren looked like he wanted to disappear into the floor. Gambling debts, Mom whispered. Marcus nodded grimly. Sports, betting mostly. Some casino debt. He's into several different creditors for amounts that exceed his annual income. The house scheme wasn't about family togetherness. It was about financial desperation. I watched my parents process this information, saw the exact moment they realized how completely they'd been manipulated. They hadn't been helping plan a family reunion. They'd been unwitting accomplices in a fraud scheme designed to bail their son out of gambling debt. Darren, Dad said, his voice barely audible. Is this true? Darren's defensive anger crumbled all at once. His shoulders sagged, and suddenly he looked less like a scheming con artist and more like a scared kid who'd gotten in way over his head. I didn't mean for it to go this far, he said quietly. It started small, just a few bets here and there, but then I got behind and the interest kept piling up and they were making threats. So you decided to steal my house to pay your gambling debts, I said flatly. I wasn't stealing it, I was going to split it fairly. You'd get half the value, I'd get half the value. It's not like you'd be left with nothing. The naivety of it was almost impressive. He genuinely seemed to believe that forcing me to sell my house against my will was somehow a fair arrangement, as long as he split the proceeds. Darren, I said, leaning forward, that house isn't just property to me. It's my home. It's my office. It's the foundation of my entire career. You can't just decide to liquidate someone's life because you need cash. But you could buy another house, he said desperately. You're doing so well now with your games and your publisher and everything. You could afford something even better. That's when I realized he truly didn't understand what he'd been trying to take from me. To him, the house was just an asset, something to be bought and sold and traded around. He had no concept of what it meant to build something from scratch, to create a space that reflected your values and supported your work and represented your independence. Here's what's going to happen, I said, my voice steady and clear. You're going to withdraw your legal claim against my property immediately. You're going to return every single item that was taken from my house during your reunion, and you're going to figure out how to handle your debts without involving me or my property. But Julia, Mom interjected, he's family. We can't just abandon him when he's in trouble. He abandoned me when he decided to steal my house, I replied. And you abandoned me when you helped him do it. The hurt in her eyes was genuine, but I couldn't let myself be swayed by it, not after everything that had happened. However, I continued, I'm not completely heartless. Darren, if you withdraw your claim and return my property to its original condition, I'll give you 30 days to get your affairs in order. I won't pursue criminal charges for the mortgage fraud or the trespassing. But if you ever try anything like this again, if you so much as think about involving my property in your schemes, I'll have you arrested. Marcus was taking notes, turning our conversation into a formal agreement. And the house, he asked, what are your terms for ongoing family access? I thought about that for a long moment. Part of me wanted to ban all of them permanently to make it clear that actions have consequences. But another part of me, the part that still remembered being excited about Christmas mornings and housewarming gifts, wasn't quite ready to burn every bridge. Family visits are welcome, I said finally. With advance notice, with respect for my work schedule, and with the understanding that this is my home, not a community center. But no more surprise parties. No more treating my property like it belongs to everyone. And absolutely, no more legal schemes. The relief on my parents' faces was palpable. Even Darren looked like a weight had been lifted off his shoulders. And if anyone wants to contribute to family gatherings, I added, they can rent the community center at the park like normal people do. Marcus finished writing and looked up. Does everyone understand and agree to these terms? One by one, they nodded. Even Darren, who looked like he was agreeing to his own execution, managed a reluctant nod. Good, Marcus said, gathering up his papers. I'll draft the formal agreement this afternoon. Julia, is there anything else you want to discuss? I looked around the table at my family. My parents, who'd raised me but never really understood me. My brother, who'd tried to steal from me but was still the kid I'd grown up with. People who'd hurt me deeply but who were still somehow part of my story. Just one thing, I said quietly. I love all of you. That's what makes this so hard. If you were strangers trying to defraud me, I'd just call the police and be done with it. But you're not strangers. You're my family. And family is supposed to protect each other, not plot against each other. Mom started crying, then quiet tears that she tried to hide behind her coffee cup. Dad reached across the table like he wanted to take my hand, then stopped himself. We're sorry, Julia, Dad said. We really are. We got caught up in Darren's problems, and we forgot that you have your own life, your own needs. That wasn't fair to you. It was the closest thing to an apology I was likely to get. Not perfect, not complete, but genuine enough to be meaningful. I know, I said, and I forgive you, but things are going to be different now. I'm not going to keep sacrificing my needs to avoid family conflict, and I'm not going to pretend that everything's fine when it's not. We left the coffee shop separately, my family heading back to clean up the mess they'd made of my house, Marcus and I heading to his car to plan the next steps. The confrontation was over, but I knew the real work was just beginning. The work of figuring out how to have a relationship with people who'd betrayed me. The work of setting boundaries and maintaining them. The work of being true to myself, even when it disappointed the people I loved. But for the first time in my adult life, I felt like I was up to the challenge. 2 weeks later, I was sitting in my home office, in my house, in my sanctuary, watching Marcus put the finishing touches on the formal agreement that would protect everything I'd built. The legal documents were spread across my desk like battle plans, each page representing another layer of security between my life and my family's schemes. The house was quiet in a way it hadn't been for months. Not the oppressive quiet of loneliness, but the peaceful quiet of a space that finally belonged to me again. Every room had been restored to exactly how I'd left it before the reunion. Every personal item had been returned or replaced. Even the broken music box had been professionally repaired by a craftsman my mother had found, though the tiny crack along the ballerina's face would always remind me of what had happened here. Sign here, Marcus said, pointing to the final page of our agreement. And then this nightmare is officially over. I signed my name with a sense of finality that felt almost ceremonial. Julia Thompson, owner of her own life, protector of her own dreams, defender of her own boundaries. The signature looked exactly the same as it always had, but somehow it felt different, stronger, more permanent. Darren's already withdrawn his legal claim, Marcus said, filing the papers in his briefcase. His lawyer confirmed yesterday that all proceedings against your property have been dropped. The mortgage company has been notified that the co-borrower inquiry was fraudulent. As far as the law is concerned, your house has never been anything but 100% yours. The relief was overwhelming. For weeks, I'd been carrying the weight of uncertainty, the fear that somehow my family's scheme might succeed, that I might lose everything I'd worked for. Now finally, that weight was gone. What about Darren's debts? I asked. Marcus shrugged. Not your problem anymore. Last I heard, your parents were helping him work out a payment plan with his creditors. He's also enrolled in a gambling addiction program, which is probably the smartest thing he's done in years. I felt a complicated mix of emotions about that. Relief that his problems were no longer my responsibility. Sadness that it had taken a crisis this severe for him to get help. Hope that maybe eventually we could rebuild some kind of relationship based on honesty instead of manipulation. And the family situation? Marcus asked carefully. That was the harder question. My parents had been respectful of the new boundaries calling before visiting, keeping their stays brief and focused. But there was a distance now that hadn't been there before, a careful politeness that felt both necessary and heartbreaking. It's different, I said honestly. It may always be different, but different isn't necessarily bad. At least now everyone knows where they stand. My phone buzzed with an incoming call, and when I saw the caller ID, my heart nearly stopped. The publisher, the same company I'd met with right before my world had exploded into family drama and legal threats. "Take it," Marcus said, recognizing the look on my face. "I'll finish cleaning up here." I answered the call, trying to keep my voice professional, despite the nervous energy crackling through my entire body. "Julia, this is Sarah Chen from Meridian Interactive. I hope I'm not catching you at a bad time." "Not at all," I said, which was mostly true. "What can I do for you?" "Well, we've been discussing your project internally, and I have some news I think you'll want to hear. We'd like to offer you a position as creative director for our new Vancouver studio. Full relocation package, significant creative control, and a budget that'll let you build the kind of games you've been dreaming about." I sat down hard in my desk chair, staring at Marcus, who was trying to pretend he wasn't listening to every word. "Vancouver," I managed to say. "I know it's a big decision," Sarah continued, "and we're not expecting an answer immediately. But Julia, your vision for narrative-driven gaming is exactly what we've been looking for. This position would give you the resources and team to create something truly groundbreaking. Creative director, Vancouver. The kind of opportunity that most indie developers only dreamed about. The chance to move from creating games alone in my bedroom office to leading a team of professionals with an actual budget and corporate support. Can I have some time to think about it?" I asked. "Of course. Take all the time you need. But Julia, don't think too long. Opportunities like this don't come around very often." After I hung up, Marcus and I just stared at each other for a long moment. "Vancouver," he said finally. "Vancouver," I confirmed. "That's a pretty big deal." "That's a pretty huge deal." Marcus closed his briefcase and sat down across from me. "So what are you thinking?" That was the question, wasn't it? 3 weeks ago, the answer would have been simple. I'd built my life here, in this house, in this city. I'd fought so hard to establish my independence, to create a space that was truly mine. The idea of leaving all of that behind would have been unthinkable. But now I wasn't so sure. "I keep thinking about what you said in the hotel," I told Marcus, "about how they were trying to steal my house because what I'd built was real and valuable, about how their scheme was so elaborate because straightforward approaches wouldn't work on someone like me." "Yeah. Well, maybe the same thing applies to this opportunity. Maybe the reason they're offering me something this significant is because I've proven I can create something meaningful even without corporate resources. Maybe this isn't about abandoning what I've built here. Maybe it's about taking what I've learned and scaling it up." Marcus nodded thoughtfully. "Vancouver's not that far. It's not like you'd be disappearing forever." "And this house?" I looked around my office at the whiteboards covered with game concepts at the setup I'd so carefully designed and protected. "This house will always be here. It'll always be mine. But maybe it doesn't have to be my entire world anymore." The more I thought about it, the more excited I became. For 3 years, this house had been my refuge from a world that didn't understand or appreciate my work. But now, I had the chance to enter a world that did understand, that valued exactly the kind of creativity I'd been developing in isolation. Plus, I added, grinning at Marcus, "Can you imagine the look on Darren's face when he finds out I'm moving to Vancouver to run a game studio?" Marcus laughed. "He'll probably think you're making it up." "Good. Let him think that. Let them all think whatever they want. I'm done living my life based on their expectations or their understanding." We decided to celebrate, not the kind of elaborate party my family had thrown without my permission, but something quiet and meaningful. Marcus suggested the coffee shop where we'd had our confrontation with my family, and something about that felt perfectly appropriate. the place where I'd stood up for myself, where I'd drawn my lines and demanded respect. We sat at the same corner table, drinking coffee that was probably too strong, and talking about the future in a way I hadn't been able to do in months. The weight of family drama and legal threats was finally gone, replaced by something I'd almost forgotten how to feel. Possibility. You know what the best part of this whole situation is? I said, raising my coffee cup in a mock toast. What's that? I learned something I never knew before. I learned that I'm strong enough to stand up for myself, even when it means disappointing people I love. I learned that my work and my life and my boundaries are worth protecting even when protection requires conflict. Marcus raised his own cup, and I learned that sometimes the family you choose matters more than the one you're born into. We clinked our coffee cups together, and for the first time in weeks, I felt genuinely happy. Not relieved, not vindicated, not triumphant over my family's defeated scheme, but actually happy about my life, and my future, and my choices. My phone buzzed with a text from my mom. "Julia, your father and I have been talking, and we want you to know how proud we are of you. Not just for your success with the games, but for how you handled everything with Darren. We should have protected you instead of putting you in that position. We love you." I showed the text to Marcus, who smiled. "That's progress." "It is," I agreed. "It's not everything, and it doesn't fix everything, but it's progress." Another text, this one from Darren. "I heard about the job offer in Vancouver. Congratulations. I know I screwed up, and I know it'll take time to earn your trust back. But I want you to know I'm proud of you too. You deserve all the good things coming your way." Even that felt like progress. Not forgiveness. Not yet. But acknowledgement. The recognition that I had my own life, my own achievements, my own path that didn't revolve around family dynamics or sibling rivalries. "So, when do you call Sarah back?" Marcus asked. I thought about it for a moment. "Tomorrow. I want one more night to think about it to make sure I'm making this decision for the right reasons. But Marcus, I think I already know what my answer is going to be." He grinned. "Vancouver is going to be lucky to have you. And I'm going to be lucky to have the chance." That evening, I sat in my living room in my house, surrounded by everything I'd fought to protect. The whiteboards with their game concepts, the furniture I'd chosen carefully, the space I'd designed to support my creativity and independence. 3 weeks ago, this room had been full of strangers treating my home like public property. Tonight, it was mine again, quiet and peaceful, and exactly as it should be. But for the first time since I'd bought this house, it didn't feel like a fortress. It felt like a launching pad. I pulled out my laptop and started drafting an email to Sarah Chen, professional, enthusiastic, and confident in a way that would have been impossible before everything that had happened with my family. Because that's the thing about defending yourself, about standing up for what you believe in, about refusing to let other people's limitations define your possibilities. It doesn't just protect what you already have. It opens doors to things you never imagined you could achieve. As I typed, I could hear my grandmother's music box playing softly from my bedroom. The melody slightly different than before, because of the repair, but still recognizably for Elise. Still beautiful. Still mine. Still playing even after being broken. Just like me. Sometimes standing up for yourself means disappointing the people you love, but protecting what you've built is never selfish. What do you think about Julia's choice to move to Vancouver? Have you ever had to choose between family loyalty and self-protection? Let me know in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this story, hit that subscribe button for more real-life drama that'll keep you on the edge of your seat.